Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are back on the C63 with the camshaft wear slash cylinder head issue. If you've not watched part one, this video will make no sense to you, so I'll leave a link below for part one. Go and watch that and then come back to this one. We've finally had the heads back from the machine shop. They have successfully removed a good guide, copied it, and then fitted new guides to the valves required. So here is our head. As you can see, new valve's been fitted. In fact, no, that's not the new valve. That's how clean it is. That's not the new valve. That is the new valve. Unfortunately, they didn't give us the old guides back because I would have shown you. I'm glad we've been able to save his head. They've not given me any warranty with that guide, which is a little bit concerning because I'd hate to put it back together and there's a problem, but we've got to do what we've got to do. We've got to put it back together. So I've got some cleaning to do. I've got to clean up the rest of the pistons, get the old gasket off the blocks, and then we can start reassembling. I'll probably do the more difficult side off camera and I'll do the easier side on camera because it's pointless me filming, me doing both because it's the same job. The trick is when you're cleaning the block is we're trying to clean it without getting into any of the material. So we've got a plastic scraper, which to be fair does a pretty good job. A metal scraper, which you have to be very careful with because that can actually cut into the aluminium. And the pistons, I've just left them soaking in WD-40. And that's it. Just got to take your time with this bit. Cleaning takes time. Just be patient and be very careful. Right, we're getting somewhere with cleaning the block up now. While we're in there, before we put the head on this side, because we're not far off, is a crankshaft position sensor, which goes down the back there. It's really easy to access with the head off. They're not too bad to do with the head on, but they can get stuck in there. It's not as common on the 63s as it is the 55 AMGs, but I have replaced a few. Cuts out when hot, won't restart until it's cooled down. Crank sensor, slots in the back there. Definitely well worth doing. Oh, it's stuck. We're in the long-term storage bay, which we don't have any tools here, so we've got bits and bobs going on to try and get us by. I'm actually using cheap tools. Remember to plug it back in now, otherwise the car will never start. As you can see, we've got cleaned the piston tops best we can without aggravating things too much. Right, cylinder head is on. It's a bit of a struggle and a bit of a wiggle putting it on, so that is off camera. We'll try and put the other side on camera because it's a bit easier. New head bolts, latest style head bolts. We've cleaned all the threads out before putting the head bolts in because you could get a false impression that it's tight. Because it could be hydrolocking with some coolant. That's come out the coolant channel. Screw them all in by hand, have a nice feel of them. Then we need to follow the set torquing procedure, which is 10 Newton meters, 50 Newton meters, and then 3 stages of 90. And the front cover bolts, which are these, there's 4 of those in total, are 20 Newton meters. So you have to follow this very specifically. Again, it takes a lot of time. It takes longer to reassemble an engine than it does take it apart. There's lots of cleaning, lots of preparation, lots of talking, lots of checking, but looks better already. Long way off. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Next stage is 50.
A few moments later.
Right, we're on the final stage, stage 5 of the torque sequence. We've not filmed any of it because you really need to concentrate, but these are the 2 easiest bolts to demonstrate on, so we'll show you on one of them, the easiest one. So 10 Newton meters, 50, and then 3 lots of 90 degrees, one at a time within the sequence. So to measure the 90 degree turn, we've got this gauge on the ratchet. You can see it's 0, and then as I turn the wrench, it'll go round to 90, and then that is that one done. So this is the 3rd lot of 90 degrees. And then that's your 90. So as you can see there, the gauge is bang on 90. So that's the easiest one to show you on. So we have to do that. How many bolts is there? 10 bolts. 50. We have to do the 90 degrees 30 times. And obviously with the 10 and the 50 Newton meters, it's 50 times. So we'll get this one finished off, and then we'll get on with the other side, which won't be tonight because it's going home time and it's a Friday. My arm's aching. Right, back on the C63. We are really struggling to find time to put this back together. I've built up the passenger side. I know we showed you torquing the head down, but I had a bit of free time, but no one to film. So I've actually built that side up. So we've got the new intake cam on. All the timing's locked up, timing's good. Let's just cover that back up. So what I didn't show you on the rest of that side, we'll show you on the other side. This is the good thing, we've got to do the same job twice, basically. I think we showed torquing the head down, and that was it. We've got to put the head on the right-hand side. We will do that again. We'll definitely show you putting the cams in and setting up timing. I also managed to get in the oil filter housing, the thermostat. So I've made notes of where I'm up to. So that is completely torqued down. So we've got a fresh start on this side. So we'll take you through that process and show you what you missed. First thing we need to do is put some gasket sealant around that coolant jack there. Now, it's quite unusual that you'd have to do this when doing a head gasket, but when this engine was built from factory, there's naturally gasket sealant there. So it goes straight on top, you put your gasket on, and then you put it on top of your gasket as well. Plastic knife. 3-layer gasket, that. Right, so your gasket goes on top. And we're going to put another layer on, and then we'll put the head on. Start the torque sequence. Okay, that's the head on. Same torque sequence as the other side. And then we can start building up the cylinder head. Right, so we've screwed all the bolts in by hand because we want to have a good feel of them. The first torque setting is 10 Newton meters. Right, first sequence done. By now you're kind of getting the idea. So we've got to do 10, 50, and then 3 lots of 90 degrees on each one. Number 2, the last 90 degrees. So as we're going along, we're ticking where we're up to, because you literally have to, one person wants you and you turn around and you forgot. Last things to do are the small M8 bolts that hold the front of the head to the front cover. You alright, Paul? We are, mate, but you can appear if you want. So we're just explaining about distractions when you're talking a head down.
Alright.
And the snap-on man's here.
One eternity later.
Right, so that's my cylinder head all torqued down. Next job is to put my tappets in. I've got brand new tappets. I've left them soaking in some fresh oil. Just put them in one at a time. And these aren't Black Series tappets, before anyone comments. Everyone says you should upgrade to them, but depends how long you're planning on keeping the car. You know, these tappets are good for 100,000 miles, if not more, depending on how the car's looked after, regular oil changes. I think these tappets are about £25 each. I think the Black Series ones are £35 each. Tappets are in. We thought we'd lost one for a second, but we haven't. What I'm going to do is put some of this anywhere where there's a metal material that's going to move. So if you look when I apply it, you'll see how much it sticks. So I'll just apply that to everything as I'm going along, building it up. I'm sure someone in the comments will highly disagree. You're doing it wrong. Brand new camshaft. I always do a bit of a test when I get a new camshaft. Either pour oil down the front or blow air down the front. Make sure that air or oil comes out of there. I've not discovered this. Tassos, which is an AMG builder, he has had camshafts delivered from the dealer, and some of the oilways, I won't say are blocked, but it's like they've not been machined properly and has burnt out camshafts. Apply air down the front of the cam and I can feel air coming out. So I'm going to block that one up. So air's coming out of all the holes, which is good. The first hole is quite big. The rest of them are quite small. I'm sure there's a purpose behind that. Like I say, another good one is put a funnel in the top, fill it up with oil, and then as it fills up, it'll come out of the holes. We're going to put this in, pour oil all over it, and get it timed up, but that is a must check because that would be a disaster. Thanks Tassos, who is like a C63 guru. Saw that on one of his videos, and ever since I've always carried out that check. That's the two cams in, so we laid everything out in the same order that it came off. We can start putting the cam caps on, exactly the same position they came off, one at a time. Right, I've just had to take the exhaust cam back off because I have not put the slide pin in for the top sprocket, and this is the problem with stripping something 10 weeks ago and putting it back together 10 weeks later. I've probably done 70 jobs since then, let alone running a business. I'm sure many mechanics watching this can relate to me on that. You slide hammer that back in there and you hear the noise change, so that means it's at home. Also, there is the Allen key which goes in the middle to hold it all together. Back on to the cams. So the idea is when you're bolting a cam down, it's not going to sit flush, especially on this engine when it's timed up. So you got to move up and down the cam, then you can move it to time it up. But you want to obviously put it in as close as you can to the timing. Camshafts are in, bolted down. We're going to torque them up. We've got the adjusters off at the front. I've got the locking plate in at the back. Camshaft bridges are 10 Newton meters. So that's the right hand bank all torqued down, cams torqued down. Obviously we've got the timing set at the back, but also there's a timing piece for the front. If you come and look at the front, that slot's on there. and bolts in. So we've also got to fit that. So I've actually got 2 M156 timing kits so I can lock up both heads. It's a bit overkill really. You could use that at the, anyway, I've got 2 kits, both fitted to both sides. So we're just in the process of putting the cam adjusters on. So we've got a new washer in the back, new bolt in the front. There's a special tool that aligns the teeth together, as you can see, because otherwise, I'll show you on a different one, you'll never get it on. This part of the sprocket isn't timed, but the front part is. You've got to time up the cams, time up these pickup rings, and we'll show you how to do that. Now these bolts are still loose because we need to be able to turn these to line it up with the next timing tool. In and aus. That's my German impression. So that's intake, EIN, AUS, aus. In and aus. We've got to put it roughly in place until it slots in between these pins. The timing gears are now lined up in the tool, so you can see they're locked in position. So you have to have that tool on when you're talking, the cam adjusters on, otherwise they'll move and then you'll be getting a engine management light, or if you're American, check engine light. That is a genuine Mercedes tool and it doesn't fit on the dowels properly. I've got one genuine tool, one non-genuine. And I've put my Temu Special on and that fits perfect. 1-0 Temu. I thought I'd buy a Mercedes one for better accuracy, but it doesn't fit as good. So they are 45 Newton meters and then 90 degrees, and these are all brand new bolts. Set up the torque wrench to 45. Next thing is 90 degrees. So what I'm doing here is I'm just marking all the bolts straight up. So when I do it 90 degrees, I'm getting 2 confirmations. 1, I'm doing it with the angle gauge, and 2, if I get distracted, I can see which one I've done. Now we can put the tensioner in, torque the tensioner in to 75 Newton meters. Literally just fits in that torque wrench to torque that up. Take all the timing tools off, I'll do that now, and then check the timing. The putting back together process takes a lot longer than taking apart. There's a lot of torquing, a lot of checking, whereas taking it apart, you're just kind of cracking on. So we need to do 2 revolutions of the crank, which is 1 revolution of the cam. Check all our timing again, hopefully no issues. So our crank marking is back to where it was. So now we'll check the timing on the top of the engine. So these should just slot on. That's 1, that's 2. So timing's all good. Oh, we need to check our adjuster plates again. Make sure that cover goes back on. Yep. Everything's good, timing's good. Off camera, we've refitted all the auxiliaries. Nothing too exciting going on there. We've actually built up the left bank, front cover on, rocker cover on. Nathan, who's holding the cameras, got to put the plugs and the coils in. The reason I got on with that off camera is I need to hurry up, and it's the same procedure on this side. So what we're doing this side applies to both sides. So first job we've got to do is refit this front cover. If you have a look at this here, we are going to replace this gasket first and foremost. A lot of people don't change them, or I see a lot of people ask the question, oh, I'm doing my cam adjusters, should I change that gasket? Yeah, it's not a lot of money, and just get it changed. I like to lube up the gasket with rubber grease. The reason being, it keeps it nice and soft. And you can feel how much prouder that new gasket is compared to the old one. Next job is we've got to slide that over the adjusters. Now, this is a very easy mistake to make. You see these rings? You've got 1, 2, and 3. Now, when you pull this cover off, or you refit it, you can drag one of these rings away from the position it's supposed to be. So if you look here, I'm checking it, I've not touched this, so this must have been on removal. We've got one there, which is covering the oil holes, so that's in the wrong position. That needs to be there, and I'll just do that with my hand. So that's where it's supposed to be, but you didn't know that, did you? So Nathan's learning as well. So if you look at that again now, so you've got to ensure that they are not covering the holes. 1, 2, 3. What I like to do is I get my Lucas oil, nice and sticky. I put a dollop on top of each one, and that just holds them in position. You can see it's really thick, this stuff, and it just stops them jumping. Put them all in by hand. Front cover is 10 Newton meters. Now we're going to do exactly the same with the rocker cover gasket and bolt that down. Again, once it's fitted, I'm going to rub the rubber grease on the mating surface that touches that, because once it's on, you need to move it a little bit to get all your bolts lined up, so it just allows it to move rather than snagging the gasket. Before the cover goes on, we're going to cover the cams in the special sauce. And then that'll just run down the cam lobe, and it'll also just go on top of the tappet. Just going to squirt a load down on the chain. Just give it as much protection as we can for when we start it up. See how it moves? That will just allow me to line the bolts up without snagging the gasket. I've found the coil pack bolts that are in the rocker cover. So the rocker cover down, which is 9 Newton meters. Reece just made a valid point how most things are 10, but they decided this to be 9 for some reason or other. Making good progress, I think. Manifolds needs to go back on. A couple of while you're in there is while we do that. We're going to change the PCV valve, which is at the back here. Obviously intake manifold, gaskets, bolts. Before you know it, we'll be ready for its first startup. Said we'd get looking like we're getting on the home run hours ago. Total plugs in. Keep cleaning stuff. Toolbox cleaning products, as always. Clean everything as we go. Before anything goes back on, everything gets a clean. I will leave a discount code in our description for toolbox cleaning products, and that is not a sponsored ad. We use and have done for many years their products, and they very kindly just give us a code for you guys. Brand new coil packs going in, which if you've seen part 1, the customer has already replaced, so it's having a good old refresh, this car. Well, if you've not seen part 1, I'd highly suggest you go back, because this will make no sense at all, especially if you've made it this far in the video. I don't know why Mercedes or AMG, whoever, decided to change from the aluminium rocker covers to the plastic ones. These aluminium ones were so much better. One for screwing your coils in, whereas the plastic ones was like a self-tapping screw, which after so many spark plug changes wears out. And the new ones are also really common for cracking and leaking. So if somebody knows why they changed them, I'd be interested to know. If you can comment below. It is now the following day. buttoned up a few more things, got a bit of wiring in place. We are now ready to fit the intake manifold. New gaskets fitted both sides, all the middle cleaned out. It's a case of lifting it on. Special torque procedure for the manifold, bit similar to the similar head actually. Plug in the rest of the wiring loom, get some oil in it, and then we're getting to the big moment. There is a stupid pipe that goes right underneath the manifold, so before you plonk it in place, you've got to just get that on. So hence why I'm struggling a bit. I've got 2 members of staff off today, so I've got nobody to hold the camera. Also, forgot to add, we've changed the PCV valve while we're in there. Hello. I've not really used it, to be honest. No, not really. Cheers, bye. That was the gym, seeing how my membership's going on, which it isn't, because I never get a chance to go. So it ain't going on. It's intake manifold on. So we've got brand new bolts. Intake manifold bolts are one-time use. Then we'll take you through the torque setting. I actually have this torque setting on my website, so I'll get it up on my phone. We sell a intake PCV valve kit with bolts, and we supply a diagram of the latest torque configuration. All my bolts are in. Draw myself a little diagram. Torque sequence, 10 Newton meters, 90 degrees, then 10 degrees in that order. So now I'm going to mark up all the bolts in the 12 o'clock position, do all my 90 degrees, and then my 10s. And here I am going back and forth, following the set procedure that's in the bottom corner of the screen, ensuring it's torqued down correctly. That is the manifold torqued down. So I have got wiring loom left to plug in. Lots of wiring to plug in, injectors, rail pressure sensor at the back, stuff like that. But I'm going to leave the injectors unplugged, the reason being I'm going to replace oil filter, fill it up with oil, and I'm going to give it a good crank, because we want to get all the fuel up to the engine. We want oil pumped all around the engine. We don't want to just dry start it. So I'm going to leave them unplugged, give it a good crank. A couple of things to plug in. Air mass sensors go here. We'll leave them unplugged for now. That plugs into the ducting. We're going to leave the injectors exposed and unplugged while we crank. Need to fill up with coolant, need to fill up with power steering fluid, change the oil filter, fill up with oil. I'm actually going to pour some oil straight in there with the sump plug out and just let it drain straight into the bucket, just in case there's any debris sat in the sump to come out. But we've inspected all the oil that's come out of the car, and there's actually no metal debris in it at all, so it seems like the filter's done its job catching all that worn camshaft and tap it, but that will have been wearing for some time. That doesn't happen overnight. This oil is actually going straight in and straight out into a bucket underneath the car. Filter housing, pour a load of oil in there, let that work its way down, we'll do as many miles as we can, and then it'll have another oil and filter change just to ensure it's completely flushed out. So oil's full, new oil filter, power steering's topped up, fill it up with coolant. We're going to give it a good crank, and then we'll finish plugging in the rest of the wiring loom, see if it starts. Well, it will start. Going to give it a good spin, then we'll finish building it up and go for the proper start up. It sounds healthy, so that's a good start. Happy with that. Finish off plugging everything in and go for the proper one. Final check's done, everything's plugged in, air boxes are on. We're going to go for the start up. Right, fire in the hole. Well, that's a good start. Fired up straight away. We are going to get a bit of tapping from the engine as the tappets fill up. We're probably going to get a lot of smoke from the engine bay as well. All the oil that's dripped over the manifold and stuff like that. In fact, you can probably hear the engine ticking away. Tick, 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 tick. In fact, it's quite normal for one of these if you're not a frequent driver. If you're a weekend driver, one of these, you probably relate to that noise on a Sunday morning when your car's been stood around all week. So people say I don't smile much on this channel. Well, you see me smile when it started up then. So leave this idling for a good 15-20 minutes before we even touch the accelerator. Let the tappets fill up. That is running spot on, no misfires, nothing. Right, it's been running for 15 minutes. All the tapping noises have gone. It's full operating temperature. That's literally 2,000 RPM, 2,500. And that's what you buy an M156 for. Proper AMG. Forget these new ones. And for anyone saying don't do that, that was 3,000 RPM. We're going to get to 3,000 RPM on the road test. I think we need to tidy up and get it down the road. Right, first road test. First thing I'm going to do, reset the trip, because we want to monitor how many miles we've done. Obviously we've got another oil change to go. We've left all the under trays off because we want to inspect for leaks. It's always a nice feeling when you've done a big job like that and you turn the key and it just fires up. Even though I've been doing this job many years, that same feeling doesn't get old. Well, we're moving. That is a good start. 0.1 miles. It's never nice when you've got to give a customer bad news about the car, that the engine needs rebuilding, the engine's blown up, or in this case the top end of the engine has eaten itself to death and needs rebuilding. I need to update my job sheet and see where we're up to price wise, so I can make sure everything's as it should be. And then at the end of the video I will reveal how much has this cost. 2 miles at 30 mile an hour. We've got another 2 miles at 50 mile an hour, and then we'll go back to the garage, to be honest, back on the ramp, check everything for leaks again, and then I'm just going to drive it for a couple of days, I suppose. And I suppose we'll see you in a few days. So we've done 20 miles and done the second oil change, the oil filter. I've had the car cleaned. We've obviously had the car a long time, so it had gathered up a fair bit of dust in the workshop, so I've had a valet ready for collection, and it is running absolutely spot on. So first thing I need to do is fill it up with fuel, because I've left it running for that long doing multiple testing, obviously 20 miles, which isn't a lot. We're on reserve. £80 for 60 litres of super juice. Pretty well priced. Tesco Momentum 99. Smiles per gallon. People say I don't smile much. It's because I'm concentrating all the time. So everybody's probably dying to know, how much has this cost? Well, I'm going to go through prices when I get back to the garage, but let's talk about the job. It's been a big job. The initial diagnosis was you put your car in for a misfire and you'd think, oh, spark plug, coil pack, whatever, and all of a sudden you're having a top-end engine rebuild. So not ideal for anyone. And when I say anyone, that includes me. You know, I didn't really have time to do this job at all. Luckily, it's not the customer's main car, so they've been very flexible on time scale. If they weren't, to be honest, I would have got it collected and passed the job to someone else, I suppose, because if I was on a time limit with it, I'm just too busy. So it's not often I get to do jobs like this anymore, but I've actually really enjoyed that. Obviously the customers kind of give me free rein with it, as in do what you need to do. We discussed a realistic budget to enable me to do that, which was agreed upon, and I've just kind of replaced what I see fit. What I would recommend is, if you are doing a job like this and there's, while you're in there, is that you can do without incurring extra labour or a small bit of extra labour, do it. You may as well future-proof your car as much as you can and avoid something potentially to go wrong. People forget how old these cars are, I think. They get a bit upset when things go wrong. Just for example, that alternator regulator, you know, it was 50 quid, 60 quid, something like that. I won't say we've got a reconditioned alternator, because we haven't, but the main component to fail has been replaced. And if you go back to part one, you can see how much it had worn. You know, crank sensor, I've done a few of them in the past. 40 quid, it's no extra labour while I've got the heads off. Change it. This car's also had a belt and pulley kit. Obviously I've had to take them off to do the job. I've had a feel of all the pulleys. They just weren't that great at all, so it's had all fresh belt and pulleys. The customer bought the cam adjuster rebuild kit. It's worth doing, definitely, while you're in there. That is a job that is going to go at some point. I mean, at what point you don't really know, because, you know, this car's done 85,000 miles. You wouldn't expect it to want camshafts, really, would you? Any gasket that's been removed has been replaced. So yeah, I'd recommend doing the bits and pieces while you're in there. It's going to pay dividends in the long run, as they say. So let's get you back in the garage and we'll go through the bill. Right, back in the garage. Somebody's using the air hammer in the garage, and I'm also blocking my own doorway, and somebody now wants to come out. Right, let's try again. Total bill, drum roll, £6,300. Well, £6,299.46p to be precise. That does not include the fuel that I've just put in it. It doesn't include the valet. The fuel's got to go on the bill, but the valet is complimentary, just for being a good customer and just not putting any pressure on me, really. To break that down, £1,895 in labour and £3,354.55p in parts, and obviously that is plus VAT. So what do you think to that? People are coming and going. This bill does not include the camshaft adjuster rebuild kit, because the customer supplied that himself. I think those kits are about £600. Don't quote me on that. I'll leave the link to the website that sells them below, so you can check that out for yourself. So I think that concludes this video. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment below what you think to the result and the price. You know, I'm being pretty honest and open on this channel. I've not got anything to hide. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.